First thing they need to determine is, where's my audience? The answer is not that sexy. The answer is getting started. The sales professional starts viewing themselves as if they were themselves a digital newspaper.
Hello Sales Nation, I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman Podcast, and welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is all about the mistakes that we're all making in social selling, and our expert is none other than Jamie Shanks. Jamie is a really incredibly interesting expert to me because he's not someone who did sales at some point, has written a book, and is now talking about social selling from the standpoint of an expert. Jamie's business, Sales for Life, is training some of the world's biggest companies and the sales teams in social selling. And so he's got the opportunity to test a lot of this and see what is working and what resonates with the audience and what doesn't. So I take a lot more care and I take a lot more intrigue into what Jamie has to say on this topic than perhaps some of the other people we've had on the show. You can find out more about Jamie over at salesforlife.com, and it is a brilliant episode. And so let's jump straight in, no messing around, into today's show with Jamie. Hey Jamie, and welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. This is going to be a good one, I'm sure. And today we're going to talk about what salespeople get wrong with social and social selling. And I guess the first place to start was a massively loaded question. I think it's a loaded question anyway. Should all salespeople in the B2B world specifically be using social to sell in 2016?
First thing they need to determine is, where's my audience? And in most B2B cases, their audience, whether that's an information officer or a CEO, their audience is consuming online, and they are social in some nature. So the loaded question, for the most part, I would say yes. But the first audit you always need to do is determine, where's my audience? If my audience only consumed via email, and they were such a niche of an audience, well, only provide information through email. But considering that most in our B2C world consume content to do due diligence, you can assume that the B2B, when they're on the couch, on the weekends, at night, they're also thinking of work, they're consuming online content, they're meeting their peers online. So that loaded question I would answer with a little bit of an asterisk, but a yes.
And is there a split here, Jamie? Because, and just the wording you use then of consuming content, is there a split here between where people consume content online, LinkedIn primarily, I guess, for a B2B audience, and also where they're on socially, where you can do your research and you can find out more about them before you reach out and that kind of thing?
Absolutely, because I think one of the misconceptions of social is people will think of the mediums such as LinkedIn and Twitter as the main drivers of communication. They are a communications vehicle. But a blog, whether you as an individual have set up your own personal blog or you're leveraging your corporate blog and the insights that are there, a blog is a form of social. And in fact, for our business, is one of the largest drivers of inbound traffic and communication between our customers or potential customers. So thinking of the word social and digital, make sure that kind of social is just a byproduct of digital, really. So let's more talk the word digital. Social is just an element of it, but content such as in a blog, whether it's yours or third party, is part of this social mix.
Is that something that people are getting, and salespeople, management and leadership are getting mixed up with? Because obviously there's this huge push and excitement around, I'm going to do air comments for anyone listening to this, but social selling. Whereas other people that have come on the show before, my kind of thoughts on this is it's just sales, but you've got different tools to do it in. It's not a new way of doing things. Do you agree with that?
100%. And actually, the way that I would define social selling, a picture of Venn diagram, 3 circles. Okay, social selling is a mix of 3 sales techniques, but it's being mechanized through tools like LinkedIn and Twitter. Remember, LinkedIn and Twitter are a communication medium within social. But those 3 Venn diagrams, insights-based selling means I'll consume insights to have a more contextual conversation and share insights with you to push you on status quo. Number 2 is trigger-based selling. It wasn't invented by social, but it's mechanized through tools like LinkedIn to be able to determine, have there been job change alerts within my named account? And the third, referral-based selling. LinkedIn didn't invent referral-based selling. It just helps mechanize referral-based selling by networking who in that org knows somebody in that org and can introduce me. And so if you think of social selling as three distinct sales components, but being powered through digital, now you start to understand what makes up social.
And out of those three, because I'm really intrigued here, we could probably do a show on each one of them. Clearly, they're all in-depth topics. But from referral, insights, and trigger, not what do people not do enough of? Which one of them do people do wrong blatantly most of the time?
I would say the first failure starts at the insights level. Number one, they are not, think of the Pareto law. The Pareto law states 80% of sales professionals will perform 80% of the activity and the results. The reality in so many organizations, you have a culture of not learning, changing or growing as a person. So I would say the first failure of those three Venn diagrams, or those three circles, would be insights. A sales professional is not self-learning, not consuming themselves, not trying to better themselves so that they can thus serve the customer better. But at the same time, since they're not a consumer of new insights, they're not on a routine basis helping shape that buyer's journey. They're not sharing new insights, data sheets, infographics, videos, case studies, podcasts like this to teach something new to a buyer. And the buyer is having to learn on their own or go to other places, potentially competitors. So I would say one of the first failures is that mindset of the sales professional. I need first, and I need to be able to dispense new wisdom into the buyer's hands that they don't already know.
And why is that? Why is there a gap between, I guess, your professional knowledge and education versus how fast the market's moving?
It's even a bigger question that I wouldn't be able to answer in the sense of adult learning and the education systems in various countries. But
well, let me narrow this down then, because this is something I've got a pet peeve about. Of a lot of listeners, well, clearly everyone who's listening to this show now, you've gone out of your way to download and search for and find and join the audience and comment and do all these things. So you're in this top probably 10% bubble of salespeople who are taking it seriously. So this audience might not be atypical to this, but there's probably a lot of people listening who will pay $10 or £8 for a self-help book of how to beat rejection, but won't spend X amount of money on a sales course or a negotiations course or, getting the company involved with sales of life or whatever it is. Why is there that split there between what people will spend on self-help stuff, but they won't spend on sales skills and knowledge, which, it's cheesy, but it's an investment and it will pay back many times over?
So it's a preconceived notion of the return on investment of value, and I'll paint it into an analogy. Bear with me here. So we all, well, not clearly yourself, but me, I need to get in better shape and lose weight. So what do? I go to a gym. The science behind the gym is so basic. Like caloric intake in versus foot burned over 1 week. If I burn more than 500 kilojoules or calories a week that I take in, I lose 1 pound a week. It's like the science of weight is so simple. In my business, we have empirically proven that those that are willing to learn and take learning and put it into action will outperform their peers. But that's the science of it. But the reality is that's why millions and millions and billions of dollars are spent on weight losses and shakes and meals and diets. Because pragmatic, we all know that those that are willing to learn and change their behavior are most likely to succeed. But it's that art piece is so difficult. It's so difficult to get started. It's so difficult to keep motivated to recognize that a change of behavior can take 90 days, 6 months, 1 year. And most aren't willing to put that time and energy in. So when they look at it, return on investment, I spend $20 on a book or $1,500 on a course. One takes me 4 hours to read. One's going to take 6 months. People take the path of least resistance. It's an unfortunate state because I would have viewed myself in my 20s as I was that lazy sales professional. I did better myself in my 20s. I only started to recognize the importance of it around my 30th birthday. And it was critical that I did and, help grow a business because, but I was like everybody else. I would have bought the $20 book because it was the quick fix.
Okay, two things from that, Jamie. We'll pull this back to social in a second for sure. So I'm 29, and as much as I've just bashed self-help and all that kind of stuff, I read, I think it was one of Tony Robbins' books when I was about 25, and then that kind of took me down like a route of bullshit books for a few years, and I improved, and I was still working in medical device sales at the time, and I was closing more deals, I was bringing more commission, I was doing really well, and then obviously I've decided to do the podcast and everything else since, and that's all stemmed from the self-help kind of thing. But I don't know how it even came to my life, and I don't even know whether I was searching for it, and I don't want to get into some hippie woo-woo conversation here. I don't know whether it just found me or anything like that. Clearly, some kind of advertising worked really well on me at that specific moment, and I bought the book. So you mentioned it happened about your 30th birthday. Is this just an age thing that over time you become less lazy and you're more likely to hustle, or are there other things involved in this as well?
So I can only speak from personal experience. So my personal experience had done 2 degrees. I did an undergrad and then I did a master's degree. So I'm 25 with an MBA, and I thought all my adult learning can now cease. It could stop. I've done enough education. And I didn't recognize that jumping into the sales world, I was now a kindergartner. I was in grade school of sales. And I did well in my mid-20s, and by the time I was 28, 29, I thought, frankly, I was hot shit too. I had, made a great wage. I was a top performer. I thought I didn't need to change. I then started a consulting firm based on what I had known, and it was only through the first 18 months of failure and then basically go bankrupt did I discover I needed to change because whatever I was doing wasn't working. So for me, that self-awareness came through a failure. For a lot of sales professionals, I hope that's not the case. I hope that it's not missing getting fired and then waking up. I hope that some people can dig deep and look at the macro trends and realize, holy Lord, I need to change the way I sell. Social and digital is clearly a path that's working. I think that that's what most people will do. I think you probably will need to learn like I did. Through failure, shake it off, recognize I need to make a change.
Good stuff. I appreciate your candid response to that. Bring this back to social then, but keeping it in this conversation. What are some things that salespeople are doing now which are, you didn't use the word lazy, I think you used the word or the sentence easy way out. Yep. What are salespeople, I call it lazy though, what are people doing that are taking the easy way out on social when it's a shortcut which is not doing them any good?
And I would see the advent of the sales acceleration space or the sales tools space. I love LinkedIn. I love Twitter and Hootsuite and Buffer and Feedly and employee advocacy. These are all tools within my arsenal, but they're only effective because I have first had a mindset shift. I then had a skill set shift, and now I'm ready to adjust from the set side of it. Quote from Jill Rowley here. But the reality is I'm a believer that I need to make personal changes in my routine and my behavior mechanically first, and then I'll use a tool to accelerate that process. And I think the make being made is sales professionals and enablement teams in general are going out and they're buying thousands of licenses of employee advocacy, or thousands of licenses of Navigator. We've seen customers that have Navigator licenses for sales professionals that don't have LinkedIn accounts. And that's just, it's an unfortunate mix that now you're giving people keys to yet they can't drive standard. They've never driven around the block. And so expect is going to happen. And so that is probably the biggest sign of the laziness factor of throwing the tool before you've.
And what is the mindset shift that you mentioned then, Jamie? What do we have to, and again, I assume this is a conversation in itself, but what is the initial mindset shift that has to happen before we can start perhaps hacking the process and using a bit of automation or enablement or whatever the software help is?
Now, anybody that knows me, it drives them crazy speaking analogies, so I'm going to spin another analogy. So I'm a huge, that mindset shift is that the sales professional starts viewing themselves as if they were themselves a digital newspaper, so a brand within a brand. And what I mean by that is, my question to you is, if you owned a newspaper, how do you grow?
You grow by giving good content, and I suppose from a newspaper perspective, that is shared, so it naturally drives word of mouth and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you grow by readership and subscribers, right? The more newspapers you can slap on people's doorsteps, but in the digital world, the more people that come online to read, the more, and so here's what happens. The more that you start seeing yourself as a brand within a brand, a digital newspaper, the more that you share to the world, your target market, whether that's management best practices or it's medical device best practices, your wisdom. What happens is people take notice of it. Check out your LinkedIn profile as an example. They want to connect with you. You add them in your network. The more people you add into your space, the more that they will help promote and go viral, your content go viral, the more that it gets in the hands of more medical device professionals. They're added into your network. Opportunities, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Where is the split here, Jamie? And I've interrupted you there very purposefully because you're going to have a great answer to this, and it's not something that's been answered that well in the past on the show. Where is the split? I totally get what you're saying. I'm totally on board. I'm all up for empowering salespeople. Personally, I think there should be, within a company, perhaps less salespeople that are those specific niche industry or regional experts, and they've got a better team underneath them to support them. We talked about it on the show other times. But where is the split, if you're becoming a brand within a brand, between marketing and sales at that point? Because if a salesperson can do everything you just described well enough, you perhaps don't even need a marketing department.
So you need a marketing department to fuel the insights factory. So that's in itself a whole other conversation. But marketing creates, organizes, helps you distribute, find the content you need and distribute it, and evaluate the trends of what your customers are consuming to feed better insights in your hands so you can better serve your customer. That's a whole. So
to use an analogy then, are you as the salesperson the editor of the newspaper, and marketing is part of your team to help drive the content? I'm going to steal that. Thank you. That's a fantastic way of looking at it. So here's the thing. Marketing looks at your business as a macro machine, right? Distributes through channels that they have, email, so have you, out to the market. What they don't care about is that you're a sales professional in a pocket of Ireland, as an example, and you only care about these 50 accounts. Your marketing team is self-absorbed with the rest of the world. You, as the Scotland professional, is looking at those 50 accounts and individually editing and choosing based on your entire internal content library and the available third parties that you will showcase these insights and drip feed them to those 50 customers at appropriate times of that person's buying journey. It's a very tailoring process. So to answer your question, where do they get involved? Professional, depending on where you sit in that buyer's journey, your role in the org, yours to help move them along that journey, picking and pulling from those insights that make sense for that company specifically. Now, why you broadcast a social network is you're just casting a net. The broadcasting to your total network
drip marketing campaigns, but it's not targeted.
Okay, from that then, a couple of questions. Should salespeople be creating their own content, and should salespeople be doing either that or curating it under their own little bubble and their own brand, which they take with them to company, or should they be doing it under a company? So I realize there's a bunch of questions there.
So just from a context standpoint, I'm talking about this before, global 2,000 companies. So we're servicing company with hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of sales professionals. What is not scalable is individual sales creating and registering their own WordPress blog site, maintaining their own WordPress blog site. That got tried by a few companies, IBM, Exo Communications. We worked with companies to create micro blogs. It wasn't a scalable process. What is scalable, does work, is you create insights committees where professionals are transferring the intellectual property from what they're hearing from customers in the market, and they're having monthly routine meetings with the marketing team to say, we need a test on this. We need a webinar on this. Our customers are having this problem, an infographic that solves this. The marketing team, to what we were talking about before, organizes it into a content library and a content calendar, and then dish sales professionals' hands. Sales pros become the editor-in-chief, as you described them. They're back, they dispense it to their customers, await feedback, have conversations with the customers. Next month, give new feedback on new insights or iterations that they need. And we call the IP transfer loop. That's how you scale this level.
Yeah.
And now the sales professional has a vested interest in it. It's they created out of their mind. They'll share it, partly theirs. That's the way to do it.
I love this. You're the first person who has also answered this question with, and we've tried it. I had a couple of people on the show who have given answers, and people get really passionate one way or the other on that. And the fact that you've tried it and experimented just means clearly you got the right answer for right now in 2016. We've trained
300 companies, and we've learned 299 ways of not doing things. Right?
Sure.
So.
And from that, I guess the analogy of the editor works as well, because that's how a newspaper editor runs the newspaper. They know what gets picked up the most. I guess online, it's even more. They've got even more analytics, so they'll then go to their writers and ask them to different stories. And so I like that analogy. I sound like I'm being big-headed because I came up with it, but I do like it. I'll stick with that.
It's good. I like it.
Jamie, on that then, and final point on this before we jump into a few questions that I ask everyone that comes on the show. Where is this going wrong then for people who perhaps aren't working with you, or perhaps when people start working with you? It seems that this is such a big, monstrous puzzle to put into place that we're almost getting out of the conversation of what do salespeople do wrong in social and what do corporate top 2,000 companies do wrong in it. If we nail this back down to the salesperson and back to social, in this process of iterating content and sharing it back out, where is the biggest, or going back to Pareto's law, what is the biggest mistake that they are doing, which resolving it would give them 80% of the results?
Yes. And the answer is not that sexy. The answer is getting started. Back to the Pareto law, 80% haven't even begun. So they haven't, a simple tactic that any sales professional could do, recognizing internal source of content, good, bad, or ugly, you can determine that. And then there's the third-party market, right? Other people, whether it's competitors, analysts like Foreigner, you can pick and pull from. Assume you'll have a variety of both. Go register a Feedly account. Feedly account is a content aggregator. All it does is you choose blog sites that you find valuable, that you know to your audience. It might be Harvard Business, this podcast, Gary Vaynerchuk's Ask Gary V. Okay, so you highlight the blogs that you like to see. On your desktop computer every day, it is showing you every time they publish a new blog, there for you. Quick scan in 10 minutes, you may find one or two articles that are effective for your audience who's a up-and-coming chief officer in a small to medium business. You then take that insight, you can share it via email, you could call them and talk about it, you could print it out, bring it to their, you could share it socially with them with a customized note that says, I was thinking of you. Read paragraph 3. These are the changes that are happening in the marketplace. We saw 3 customers do this last month, whatever it is. Now you're moving somebody a little inch further along their buying journey. You've helped clarify a few questions for them, but you have created trust, more trust in the buyer's eyes that things differently than the typical sales professional who just says, buy this, buy this, buy this.
Which is more important in this? Is it just having someone's attention, or is it that trust building element?
I think it is. I think it is. One has to happen before the other, and I think that people will. There's the type of people that will read that whole article down to the last word. They're meticulous about what they do, and they'll only share it once they understand it. But you have to create attraction, and attraction, like Grant Cardone style, requires some omnipresence, requires you out there. I think you should be less concerned about the little details than just getting started and getting out there.
And the reason I asked this, Jamie, and you've touched on it there, is it better to err on the side of having more attention? And a good example of this is perhaps Gary Vaynerchuk and Grant Cardone. In that, is it better to have a crap ton of content out there, Grant Cardone style, which is a lot of it is super high quality, some of it is less high quality, or is it better to go the Gary Vaynerchuk route and have probably less stuff being thrown at you constantly, but it's of a higher quality? For the sales professional, is it better to have more attention, or is it better to give away a bit of that attention to have higher quality content which builds more trust?
Most people don't like my answer to this, but I'm just going to speak it honestly. Done by HubSpot, where they monitored when they started 7 blogs a week, dropped it to 15 and 20, and now 30 blogs a week. It only had an accelerator. In 2016, whether this is the answer in 2020, but in 2016, the world of omnipresence, of just bubbling to the surface, seems to be more effective than those that are less active publishing or being out there. Great stuff. You will have publishing great stuff is always going to find you that you're a core audience. And if that's your goal, if you only need a small core audience to service your business, great. In my world, I needed omnipresence. We service a global market, so it's very different. So I'm just speaking from experience that volume in my world, of course, mixed with great content, but volume trumps everything. And marketing teams struggle with this. They'll blog once a week. It's not to get in front of your customer.
I totally agree. That is why the show is now 7 days a week rather than the 3 shows that we were doing. It's now why we put out at least 3 videos a day on Facebook and another separate couple of videos on YouTube. And I, again, hate to say it, but not that the quality of the shows, we still have a high standard for guests that come on the show, but because I do a lot of the video editing, I rush a lot of the video editing just to get it out there. And no one's complained for the fact that I do twice as many videos in just the same amount of time. I've got more people watching them, and no one has ever said, perhaps there was a spelling mistake in 1 out of 50 videos.
Oh, wow.
And no one cares. They just want, and I guess this speaks to, on the bigger conversation, just the society that we're living in at the moment. This may change in that we want 5 beeps a day on our phone from a specific brand with all this content, and we want to consume it. And there'll be some point where we can't consume anymore and we all go mental and have breakdowns, and it's probably it's probably as soon as you get Google irises or Google whatever they're going to stick into your head, where you get electric shocks every time you get a notification, as opposed to your phone, which you can occasionally put away. There might be a shift then, but I'm totally on board with what you're saying, and I totally agree with it.
Look at the way LinkedIn doesn't have strong filtering processes right now, unless you're a Navigator user, filter based on your customer. But so if you use a tool like Hootsuite, you can create lists and so forth. But you just as the example of like your news feed is like a waterfall. It just keeps coming and coming, and you're not able to segment. I just want to listen to human capital management news. Well, and until the world starts creating more and more filters where basically the population can decide they're only listening to certain voices or certain topics, then for now, it's truly a broadcasting process.
For sure. Well, Jamie, we're getting close on time here, so I've got a couple of questions that I ask everyone that comes on the show. First one, who is the world's greatest salesperson?
World's greatest salesperson? I don't know. That is really, really hard. Who do I? When I wake up in the morning, I have found I am highly attracted to what Gary Vaynerchuk's doing. I think he's authentic, but he just understands marketing, the role of a marketer and sales kind of started to blur together.
I totally agree with that. I think that he's doing well. We just talked about him, and by just talking about him, his content is obviously working, and we're sharing his message. So, that explains itself. In the show notes of this episode over at salesman.red, I'll include some Gary Vaynerchuk videos or content in the links at the bottom, so anyone who isn't aware of him can find out a bit more about him. Okay, next one, Jamie. What is one thing that you do every single day that you can equate some of your success to?
Not checking email when I first wake up. So this is an interesting one. This was taught to me a couple of years ago in our curriculum as part of a social selling routine. Our first instinct, our phone sits on the night that we pick it up when we get up, and we start checking emails, and we get driven into other people's priorities. Emails are other people's priorities, that they want you to do something. Instead, you wake up and you serve your customer as a sales professional. So now, instead of me waking up, pressing Google Mail, and getting sucked into the abyss of email, I'll open up, we use Everyone's Social as an employee advocacy tool, or I'll open up Feedly, and I'll grab an insight that I'll then share either to my network or to a customer and say, hey, did you see this data point from Forrester? It's showing X. Let's have a conversation about that next week. So that simple mindset shift and then behavioral change has made a world of difference of how both I approach the day and then how we teach people to approach the day.
Good stuff. Okay, next one. And I feel like I'm going to get a great answer from you on this, Jamie. Usually it takes me 3 or 4 questions to get below the surface level of I like making my customers happy or something like that. But what motivates you to close more deals personally?
Actually, Rich said it really well. The most important people is actually a team. Our team, and Gary Vaynerchuk said similar, our team is more important than our customer. What motivates me is, honestly, is building the single largest and greatest digital transformation organization on the topic of social and digital here based out of Toronto, Canada, in the world. Like, own the methodology, own the principle. Everybody around the world will use that. But that's from finding, attracting, growing amazing people. So actually, what motivates me, we want to be out of 100 in the next few years. Every single day, I think about how to make everybody comes back in every day. They enjoy being here. My team is more important than anybody.
How many people are in your team now? And I ask that because clearly you're going to be coming back and forth on the show over the next few years, and so we can keep up with your journey then.
20 on the team now, 103 years. And by having a great team spends their day how to service the customer better than I could ever do. But my day is motivated with that magic number of 100.
Nice. Interesting. Okay, Final one for me, Jamie. If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at sales?
It would come back to the continuous learning. From 25 to 30, I worked like a dog. I mean, I was really strong cold caller. Back when cold calling was tremendously, I was a hustler. I pounded the phone. I didn't experience. I didn't learn outside of my office or from the three people that sat around me. I lived in a little bubble. And the internet available, I just didn't take full advantage of it. So I would say that my younger self, when you graduate from MBA school, that is not when you're done. That's just the beginning of learning sales.
Nice. And with that, and it teases up quite nicely, I want you to tell us a little bit about Sales for Life, where we can find out more about it. And I know we have a lot of sales leadership and sales enablement staff and that kind of titles, as well as the sales reps that listen. So yeah, give us a bit of a pitch, and I think it's going to be really relevant for our audience.
Perfect. So Sales for Life built the world's largest training methodology on the topic of selling. And we service companies of all sizes, but our suite global 2,000 organizations around the planet in what's called a blended learning. So you have virtual instructor-led training like we see now, intermixed with e-learning and virtual coaching. And so we have 60-some thousand students to date, 300 customers, and our goal is very simple: to be the de facto standard curriculum for the planet on the topic of social selling.
Amazing stuff. And just share your URL for anyone who wants to scribble that down.
Sure. It's www.salesforlife.com.
Nice. And we'll share that and links to everything that we talked about in the show notes over at salesman.red. And Jamie, with that, thank you genuinely for your time today, mate. And thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing it.
And there we have it. Thank you, Jamie, for coming on the show. I massively appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy guy, and I do genuinely appreciate your insights into all of this, having the opportunity of a company underneath you to test a lot of this and see what works and what doesn't. I think that's really special, and we will definitely have Jamie back on the show to talk about this further. I want to thank you, Sales Nation, for tuning in. As always, there'd be no show. I wouldn't be sat here if you guys weren't listening. And with that, I'll speak with you all again tomorrow.